Hey Jimny fans, welcome again. As you can see, the ARB Base Rack has been fitted to the roof of the Jimny. What I'll be doing in this video is I'll be going through the fitting process step by step so that if you'd like to fit your own roof rack to your car, you can see what's required and the process that you'll go through. So if you do have some basic tools at home like I do, it is something that you'll be able to do with the help of one other person. So join me now and I'll take you through the process. Alrighty, so step one is to place the base rack upside down, either on the floor or on a table with the logo upside down, as I have done. The next step that you're going to have to do is to grab a tape measure or a measuring tape and just to measure the width of the roof gutters at the rear of the Jimny's roof, as well maybe in the midsection and slightly to the front, and just take note of that width. In the third step, we're going to be looking at where we're going to be placing the legs on the roof rack. I'm going to be leaving the outside beam open, placing one leg on the second last beam at the front and the second last beam at the back. I'm going to be leaving the middle beam open, and the last beam on both sides will be left open, and this will be for the 5-beam roof rack. On both the 5-beam as well as the 6-beam base rack, you won't want more than 2 beams open between the position of the 2 legs, and on the outside of the 2 legs you would only want 1 beam open. You would not want anything more than 1 beam outside of the 2 legs. So those are going to be the positions of the legs where I will be placing them. The fourth step and the fifth step is to grab the stud plates and put the M8 studs into these stud plates. The rounded edge needs to be facing up on the stud plate, and then what you're going to do is you're going to take the stud plate where each of the legs on the roof rack are, and you're going to drop it in and you're going to rotate it 90 degrees in a clockwise direction. Make sure the stud plate has the rounded side facing up and that it turns clockwise into position. Next, you can grab the 4 support plates, and you're going to be placing the support plate over the stud plate so that the M8 studs go through the holes in the stud plate, and you're going to do this for all 4 of the legs. Because the Jimny's roof is quite narrow, I put the Christmas tree plug into the inner hole of the support plate. If the roof is wider, you might need to put it into the middle or the outer hole. Once the support plate has been positioned over the M8 studs, you'll place the leg over the support plate and line up the Christmas tree stud, and then you'll do this for all 4 legs. Next, we'll take the washer plate and we'll just position the washer plate over the M8 studs. Make sure the rounded part of the washer plate is facing the inside towards the Christmas tree plug. Once you've done that, you can place the washer plate onto the M8 studs for all 4 of the legs. What you'll do now is you'll grab the M8 nuts and you will loosely fasten them onto the M8 studs, and do this for all 4 of the legs, but don't tighten them too much. You'll now take the compliance label for the base rack and you'll be sticking that on the inside of the rear leg on the driver's side, and just rub it in to make sure that it is firmly attached or stuck down. We'll now be fastening the feet of the roof rack to the legs using an M8 by 16mm hex head bolt and a washer. When we fasten the feet to the legs of the rack, we're going to be placing them in the highest position. Also, do not fasten the bolts too tight. They need to allow a little bit of movement of the feet. Once the feet are attached to the legs of the base rack, you will need to measure the distance and set the width that was measured earlier. For the Jimny, the width that I had was about 1.3 meters or 130 centimeters, and that was just an approximate width. At this point, we're going to be fitting the wind deflector. It is sold separately. I do recommend that you buy one because it does make quite a big difference for the wind noise. What we'll be doing now is we'll be putting the M8 studs through the stud plate, and then we'll be putting the stud plate into the beam, rotating it 90 degrees clockwise again, and lining the bolts up with the holes in the wind deflector. Next, we'll be snapping the U-nuts onto the wind deflector mounting plates, but just make sure to get the orientation of this correct. We'll then be attaching the wind deflector mounting plate to the stud plate using a nylock nut and a M8 flat plate washer, but just leave them loose enough to allow the assembly to slide. We'll now be attaching the wind deflector to the base rack. We'll start with the outer mounts first before doing the inner mounts. We'll use a large M6 washer and we'll place that between the wind deflector and the mount, and then we'll be using the M6 button head screw, the M6 washers, and an M6 nylon nut, as you can see over here, and then we'll tighten that up with a spanner and an Allen key. Once you've tightened the screws and nuts of the outer mounts of the wind deflector, you can move on to the inner mounts. Just line up the holes in the wind deflector with the mount on the base rack, and then you can use the black M6 washer as well as the M6 button head screw, and then just tighten it up to the prescribed torque. You can grab the gutter runners, and we'll be attaching the gutter runners to each foot. The manual does say it's recommended to apply a little bit of tape to stop the gutter runner from falling off while placing it onto the roof. I do advise that you do that. I tried to put the roof rack on the roof without tape, and the gutter runners actually did fall off. We'll now be positioning the roof rack on the roof. I did ask some family to give me a hand to do this. You are going to be able to do it with 2 people, however the instructions does recommend 4. If the roof rack does not take up the entire roof, ARB also recommend that you position the roof rack towards the rear end of the roof. In this video you'll be able to see the tape that we use to hold the gutter runners in place. It just stops them from falling off, and then once the roof rack is in position you can remove the tape. You'll now need to take a step back and view the roof rack from a little bit of a distance to make sure that it is centered. Because the width adjustment has not been fully tightened yet, you'll be able to reposition and adjust the roof rack while on the roof. After I thought that it was initially centered, I fastened everything up and then took a step back and noticed that the roof rack was actually a little bit skew, so I came back at a later point to readjust it, or to loosen everything up and then to readjust it again. What I did next was adjusted the height of the roof rack by loosening these bolts and sliding the roof rack down and lining up one of the holes on the feet with a hole in the leg. I then locked the foot of the base rack to the leg by fastening the M6 by 16 bolt washer and flange nut through one of the holes available. Once I did that, I tightened all the M6 and M8 fasteners to secure the feet to the legs of the base rack. Once the feet were fastened to the legs and the base rack was centered, I fastened all the width adjustments to fasten the legs to the base rack itself. So we're pretty much done. This is the clamp that's going to clamp the roof rack to the gutter. You'll be using the M8 30mm socket head bolts and washers to attach the clamps to the base rack. This is just a photo of what the gutter runner looks like in the gutter of the Jimny, and this is what the roof rack looks like when it's fitted. You can see how close it is to the aerial at the back, and you can see what the clamp looks like once it's clamped onto the rubber clamp cover to hold the roof rack on. You'll see that once tightened, it does look like there isn't much clearance between the clamp and the door when you open and close the door. Don't be tempted to screw the bolts in too tight, because there is a warning that it could cause damage to the gutters. One thing I did notice is that the clamps that clamp onto the gutter are curved on the sides. I'm not too sure if this is the best design, maybe it should have been flat. But if you tighten the clamps too tight, what they do is they cut through the rubber clamp covers and they actually damage the paint on the gutter. It does warn against tightening too tight in the instructions, but it is really close to the door, so it is tempting to do that. So that is it, the fitting of the ARB Base Rack to the roof of the Jimny. If you enjoyed this video and you found it helpful, give it a thumbs up and maybe subscribe so that you'll get a notification for the next video, which is going to be the steps required to fit the dune awning to the ARB Base Rack using the ARB quick release awning mounts. See you next time.